So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are today. Christine's in New Zealand, so it's just turned into afternoon for her. Welcome to today's art class with Delicious Art. We're doing a Misty landscape today. So if you've downloaded your video, then you would have received some notes that look like that. And you would have also received two images. There's a black and white version and a color version. So I like to have my images up on a separate screen just because it's easier then to zoom in and have a close look at things if you want to see what colors are in there or detail. If you don't have that option, then it's absolutely perfectly fine to use just this, or you can print the image out in a larger size. When I run classes here in the classroom, this is what we work off. We don't have anything else. So it's fine to work from your notes. I'm going to switch my camera over now, share the screen so that you can see what I'm doing, and we'll get started. So bear with me while I do that. There we go. So you're now looking at my desk. I've got a towel underneath my board here. Yeah. And the reason for that is that I want to be able to tip up my board and tip the pastel dust off when I need to as we go. So it's good to have a towel or something underneath that you can sort of tip all the dust onto and let it be absorbed there and not blow it all over your house or your desk or anywhere else. All right, so I'm just going to mute everybody just so that there's no background noise. However, please don't hesitate to speak up if you want to ask a question during the class, if you want me to slow down, anything like that, please speak up and let me know because I actually can't see what you're doing. So you've got to help me there. All right, let's get started. So with my classes, I always do two versions of the same picture. You'll notice on your notes, we've got a charcoal version, black and white, and then we've got the color version in pastel. So we're going to start off with our charcoal today. And we're going to refer to this black and white picture because that's telling us the tones of everything so that we can determine how light and how dark we need to make all the parts of this picture. The grid line on our colored version here shows us how we can break the pieces into 4 parts and draw them as shapes. So when you break an image into sections like that, it's a lot easier to draw it because you change your brain and you're not looking at trees and a hill, you're looking at a triangle or a square or whatever it is. So I find that's a really good way to learn to draw. And because this image is fairly simple, I've just broken it into 4 sections. You can break it down into smaller parts if that's easier for you. So have your notes nearby. We're working on plain white drawing paper today for our charcoal version. And because I'm on a board and this paper's loose, you might have an art diary or something, so you might not need to tape it down, but I'm just going to tape the corners down just so I don't have to hold on to it because it's kind of annoying when you've got to hang on to your piece of paper while you're working on it. This is 48 or 24-hour tape. I'm not sure which one it's called. Electricians use it, or no, painters use it. So it's not too sticky. It comes off fairly easy. So that's a good option to use for tape, or a bit of masking tape will do the job. All right, so I've got my piece of paper here. I've got my charcoal, so we need some sticks of charcoal. I like to have, this is very messy by the way, I like to have a kneadable eraser. So this is a kneadable eraser. They're called kneadable because you need to knead it like dough to get the pigment or the charcoal to mix through it and find a clean edge again. And you'll see what I mean when we go forward using this to lighten up different areas with the charcoal. So you'll need one of those. And I'm going to get a long stick of charcoal to draw loosely with. And then I'm going to find a shorter, fatter piece that I can blend with later. I've also got a couple of white charcoal pencils in there. They're really handy for if you're doing charcoal drawing and you want to get some white in. but I find the eraser works pretty well on this soft paper. So I'll put that aside. Next thing we want to do is look at the shape of this drawing. So it's a landscape shape. I've made it the right size to fit onto our colour fixed paper. So the colour fixed paper we use for pastels is an Art Spectrum brand. That's this piece here, which we'll do after. But I just want to talk about sizes. This is 23 by 30 centimetres. And that's the inside measurement of the actual coloured area. So that's the coloured area that we do pastel on. So it's 30 long, which is a tiny bit longer than an A4, but it's 23 wide. Now an A4 is 21 wide. So this is 2 centimetres wider than an A4. So if you want to paint to A4 to fit into a frame or something like that, for instance, you'll need to change the dimensions of your picture. Does that make sense? So you'd have to chop off 2 centimetres on the bottom or the top, or 1 centimetre on each top and bottom to make it fit into an A4 page or frame. So I just wanted to talk about that, because sometimes you think you're painting A4 and it's actually not, it's slightly larger. So that's why this looks a little bit more square than an A4 picture does. Groovy. All right, so if you want to rule up an area like this, so this is what we're going to do, a thumbnail. Now thumbnails are often very small, like the size of your thumb. However, we're just going to do it about this size on our white paper. And it's about the same dimensions. For this part of the class, I try not to get too caught up in the detail. I think it's easier just to relax into it, get into art mode, and don't get too stressed about being precise. We can do that for the next round. Okay, so draw yourself up an area like this and then find your halfway. So if you want to measure to do that, it's probably not a bad idea to put our grid mark on. 13, so that's 6.5. So you can draw your halfway or your grid lines on just lightly, and that will help us to draw up our image and get it into the right place. So to do that, we need to refer to our coloured version while we draw this up, and then we'll go back to the black and white one when we start to fill it in. So let's have a look. We'll start up in the top left-hand corner. And as I said before, now we can look at this and we can see a triangle, not a hills and trees and stuff. We'll sort that later. At the moment, we're just looking for shapes. So we can start here, which is about halfway down in our page. So let's say the hill stops there when it comes off our page. And then it goes down and it crosses over into this other quarter to about there, doesn't it? So put a little mark where it intersects that grid line on the left side of the edge of your page, and then down here on that middle line. And then just draw a little bit of a wiggly line because it's not completely straight. You can see it's got lumpy, bumpy bits because it's actually foliage. And that's basically the shape we want to get in there for that part. What else is in this section? So we can look here now and we can see there's a little row of trees or something back there, far away, off in the distance. It's quite small. So that means that it's a long way away. So coming over into this right-hand quarter, we can work out how high up inside the quarter does that row of trees begin. Just move this over so you can see. So it comes up about, what, about a quarter maybe a bit less, maybe a fifth. If you want to get technical, you can measure it. Say, okay, so that's 1 centimetre on here. And if this part is 5 centimetres, then it's a fifth. That's easy. So now I know it's a fifth of the way up. I can measure over here, say 24. Oh, that's tricky, isn't it? 6. So it's slightly more than 1 centimetre, about there-ish, I reckon. Sometimes you've got to guesstimate these things. So now I can draw a little wiggly line all the way across It's kind of, that's our horizon line. It's not perfectly straight because it's got trees and things there, but it's just a little wiggly line that goes across there. So that's the mountain. This is the background. And then we can look at the rest of this. So all of this is sky. So we don't need to put any elements in there. That's all kind of empty or clear. And then we can come across here and we can just slowly put a little bit of a wiggly stuff down through here. It's a little bit of dark shape right on that halfway line, isn't there? So marking that in there. It's very foggy and misty, so we can't see much detail. The reason I picked this is because it's fun to do some fog with pastels. Now, have a look down here inside this bottom corner on the right, and we have a triangular shape coming across here. So can you see that stripe through there? So the mist is kind of sitting behind this little part of the hill, sitting between that row of trees and behind this foreground part. So let's put that line in there. That's this green grass line here. And it starts at about there and it ends over here, probably about a third of the way down, I'd say, about there. So then we can just draw this line across like that. And it can continue across, and it doesn't quite get to the other side, does it? It sort of disappears in the mist. So we've got this line that sits there. And can you see there's beautiful shapes through here? It's kind of got this beautiful rounded, I'm exaggerating with my drawing a little bit, but it's got this lovely rounded kind of feeling through there. So that's quite lovely, like it's going down into a hollow, which is rather nice. And in the foreground, we've got all this grassy stuff. So just marking a bit of grass there because that brings us to the foreground. If you want to throw some little flowers in, you can. This is your piece of art, so you get to do little bits and pieces if you want to change things. So that's basically our drawing, isn't it? That's pretty much everything that we needed to mark in. We've got the mist that comes up. Let's put some mist in, so we're kind of working out where that sits. So I've got mist that comes around here, and then it kind of wanders down to the bottom of the hill there. So that area inside there, I'll just mark it like this so you know what I'm talking about. That area there is the misty part in the foreground. And then we've got a misty part at the back as well. So we can draw just a loose line because it's very foggy and soft. There's no hard lines with the mist. So we can mark in those misty areas just so we know where we want to try and maybe keep it light or add our lighter color as we go. All right. How's everybody going? Have you got your drawing set up now? So what we're going to do next is look at the black and white version. And we're going to just study the tone. Tone's really important, I feel anyway. And this is quite dramatic, this picture, even though it's very soft and misty, because we've got this really beautiful, dark, rich hill here with the trees, etc. on it. That's creating a lovely dark sort of strong point to look at. And then in the background on the horizon, we've got more little trees there, but it's not quite as dark because it's further away. So further away, things are always softer and they fade off into the distance. Things that are closer like this are quite dark and strong. And because that's full of foliage and trees, it's giving that beautiful dark contrast right through the middle. And then as we come down, we've got a mid-tone for the grass coming across here. The fog in the center and across the bottom of the mountain is light, but it's not completely white. And then in the foreground, we've got the grass, which again is a little bit darker, not as dark as the hill because it's soft, grassy shapes. So just important to notice those subtle changes in tone. Now let's have a look at the sky. If you look at the sky in the black and white version, you can see top left is really quite light, It's still not white because it's got a bit of a grey tinge, but as it comes across and down, it gets darker on the top of the horizon there. That to me looks like more fog. So just note that because that's important when you come to colouring your sky. Okay, let's get started. We'll start at the top. I always like to start at the top of of a landscape in particular and work my way down. So sky down to foreground. I'm just going to remove my grid line. If you want to do that, feel free. Sometimes, especially if you have a light area like the sky, the grid lines get in the way. They're a bit distracting. So it's nice to make them disappear with your kneadable eraser. Cool, cool. All right, so we've got this lovely white light area over here, but we still need to put a bit of charcoal down to get the greys in so that we can make our gradient. So this is my short fat bit, short-ish fat piece. Might need a shorter piece at this rate. And I'm just going to wipe that over and then push it in with my fingers so that I've got just a little bit of tone to play with there. You can't play with nothing. You're going to have something on the page. And remember, this sky is beautiful and wide, so we want to do lovely wide movements. So I could leave it like that. It looks quite cloudy. It's amazing what happens when you do a bit of charcoal. You can create really lovely textures and shapes. But let's just smooth it off. So once you've wiped your charcoal over, now we can just pull it across like this and smooth it off a little bit. Okay, so just smoothing that off, rubbing it into the paper. Try to move your finger in a horizontal direction because the sky is wide and smooth. So we want to have beautiful, wide, smooth marks. Okay, nice. Now that's given me a lovely place to start. So now what I can do, I can come back with my kneadable eraser, give it a little knead so I find a clean edge. And maybe I just need like a flat sort of end like that. And I'm just going to lighten up that left side a little bit. So taking some off, and you'll find as you wipe it, if you don't knead it and get a clean edge, what happens is it picks up the charcoal onto the eraser and kind of sometimes puts it back down a little bit. I'm not too concerned about that at this stage because I don't want the sky to be super white. I just want it to be a little bit lighter across that area there. And if you look at the picture, you can see that there's a light tone kind of across the top. So again, I can just use my kneadable eraser and lightly push that around. When you push it lightly, it blends as well. So it's quite good. It kind of removes the charcoal, but it also blends it in for you. So you can have a bit of a play with that. Keep kind of pushing it around. Maybe you've taken too much off and it's gone too light. If that's happened, grab your charcoal and just pop a bit more on. I need another short bit. That piece is annoying me. I've got so many bits in here. I'll try this one. If they're a bit fatter, they're easier to hold when they're flat on the paper like this. This one's got a nice smooth edge to it. So I'm just going to put a bit more dark down through there, because we want to create interest in our paintings. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to use tone, create interest in your painting. Now you can have clouds if you want to, you can change the sky, you can do whatever you like, or you can leave it lovely and smooth. So I'm going to leave mine smooth. And really it's just about putting your finger in, bringing back the eraser if you want to take some out. Again, and just working your way in through that sky. So it's a combination, charcoal, eraser, finger. Lovely. I think that will do for sky. Now we're going to look at our background. So I've lost a lot of that because when I merged my sky, I've blurred all of that and kind of lost it, but that's okay because I know where it's got to be. And I'm just going to lightly mark that back in with my longer stick of charcoal. Now, it's not as dark as this area here. This part here will be our darkest, all this mountainous stuff. But just remember to keep this fairly light. And I'm just going to draw, so I've got a straight line across there because the bottom of the horizon line needs to be fairly straight. And it wanders off behind our mountain, so that's good. We can disappear it behind that. And then I'm going to just do some little wiggly shapes with my charcoal to try and make it look like there are trees back there, or maybe they're hills. They look like trees, don't they? So just little squiggly shapes with your stick. Just kind of keep it nice and loose. Just gentle squiggly shapes. Beautiful. So we don't need a lot of detail. If you think you've gone too dark there, so look at the picture and compare it to the tone in your picture. I feel mine's a little bit too dark, but I'm just going to just dab it with my finger first and see what happens. So sometimes just dabbing the charcoal, not rubbing, but just put your finger down and lift it up again, just lightens it off enough. There we go, that's nice now. So it's just sort of lightened it off. It's left a few little darkish spots and a few little lighter spots, and that's okay. I'm quite happy with that. So you can continue to work like that with the charcoal. You can put it back on. I want to try and get these little tree tops in there. I know they're far away, but they look like trees and there's little gaps between them. So I think that'll look really nice if I can make that happen. There's a couple of little ones here that stand up. So just having a little play with those shapes in there and noticing what shapes they are and how you can make them softer or darker. So that's a lovely little area all the way back there in the distance. Now, in front of this here, we've got our mist, haven't we, which I marked in earlier. So I'm just going to lighten that off again with my finger. And maybe I'm going to put a bit more charcoal down first through here. You can see the mist that's at the bottom section of this bit of mist is a bit darker than the top section. So the top area is light and then it comes down and it gets a little bit darker. And I think that's because it's sitting on top of a row of trees and things in the foreground. And where we want it to be lighter, we can use the eraser again and just take some out. So just getting those really subtle changes between the mid and the light through there. And where it goes in behind the hill, so in here, right in the middle there, that's our sweet spot because we've got our lightest light and our darkest dark right next door to each other. So when you have a light and a dark like that near it or next to each other, that's the focal point of your painting or drawing. It's what will catch people's eye initially. So think about where that is in your picture, whether it's going to be in the middle or off to the side, and then be aware of it, just so that you know you've got to make what's around it really dark and what's behind it really light. So just be aware of that section there where we need to make that lovely and light, like almost white, but it actually isn't white, but near enough. Groovy. Okay, now we're going to come back up to the left-hand side and just mark in our mountain or hill again with our little bumpy trees. And it kind of wanders all the way across our page. We've got some little trees. Can you see those dark bumps just through here in front of that mist that we've just done, or under the mist, I should say? There's a little row of dark trees through there. So just darken that area off. And we'll soften it in a minute with our fingers just to make it not quite so strong. And then we can look at the shape of this hill. So I'm going to put some dark down through here, through the center there, center of the right side. So we've got a lovely dip. That's that dip there. Maybe I need to darken off a little bit more, that misty kind of thing, because this is not, there's no hard lines in here. It's all very soft and fuzzy, isn't it? So don't be afraid to put your fingers in if you feel like you need to push it back a little bit and lighten it up, or come back in with more charcoal if you want to darken it up. We just want to get that area in there to look like it's got some mist on it. Once we've done that, we can move over into this big hill here. Now I'm just going to get my little short fat piece again, and I'm going to fill all this in. I want to make it as dark as I can, because this is the darkest part, isn't it? Don't worry about the details of the trees and all that stuff at this stage. Hopefully they'll start to look a bit like trees once we start to push the charcoal around a bit. We're darkening up that hill there creates lovely drama in our art, not in our lives. And I'm just going to go lightly over that misty part there, because I want to sort of soften off between the bottom of the hill and the mist. Again, there's no hard lines there, so we need to make sure we've got this lovely merge from light to dark coming up into our hills. Now, where we've got the hill and the trees, I haven't gone right to the edge there, got the colour into the edges. Just going to rough up that edges a little bit because I want it to look like trees. So make them a bit fluffy, not too hard. I think they've come up a bit too high just here, so I can use my eraser. Don't forget about the eraser. It's your best friend when you want to remove charcoal. Just come down through here and then across to there, and it gets all misty and soft again. So try to keep it kind of soft with your short piece. You can just sort of pull it across like this. And then stick your fingers into the mountain. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, you see there's a misty shape across the top of the mountain there? See that there? It's a bit lighter. You don't have to put that in if you don't want to, but it kind of does make sense because it means the mist is coming from over here and it's sort of wafting across the front of the mountain. So you can lighten that up with your finger if you want. Or you can leave it really dark if you'd rather have the drama and not put the mist there. When I'm trying to make things look like trees, charcoal's great because you can get a bit of texture in there. But I'm just going to sort of dab it a little bit here and there with the eraser. So this is where you want to knead it again and just do some little dabs just to create some foliage and a bit of contrast in there so that you can tell that it's not all just a one flat colour, because it would help if I changed my shape a little bit. And then come back with my finger and soften it off a bit. Just to create a little bit of texture in there. You don't need a lot for this section anyway. When we do pastels, we'll work on that a bit more. Okay, so now we've got our mountain, we've got our sky, we've got the background horizon line in there. We've got some mist over here. We've got to get some mist in here. Just going to take out those marks that I put in earlier. I'm just going to remove those. I'm going to soften them off a little bit. Okay, all this beautiful mist. So light mist through there. So just pull that across with your finger. You probably might not need any more charcoal in that area there. You can just pull it with your finger from another area. So sometimes you can just grab it and just drag it across. Again, we're doing big, wide kind of horizontal movements with our fingers because that's the direction of everything at this stage, the misty parts. Okay. Now remember, we've got this hill here. That's that line there. And it's a green hill, but in the picture it's a pale grey. Okay, so we need to make that a pale grey colour. So grab your little fat bit of charcoal and just fill it all in like this, because we can take it out when we need to. So just filling that in through there. Oh. Oh. Sorry about that. Should disconnect my phone from my iPad, shouldn't I? Okay. Up through there like that. Now look at where it's lightest. We've got a little light section over here, which I've left undone at this point because I can pull a little bit of charcoal across without darkening it too much. So I want to keep that little bit of light in there, and I've got to get some light back into here. But let's push this foreground in first so we can get the tones right. So just push that in, fill it up nicely. When you get over to that light section on the left, you can just drag some charcoal across so we get a beautiful gradient of charcoal or tone, like that. And then if you feel like you need to go darker, I feel like I want to go a little bit darker just on this ridge, because that's going to bring it forward. Hard lines and sharp lines come forward. So anything with definition is going to be closer to us. So I just want to define that a little bit more so that it's coming closer to us. And what I want to do now is get a bit more charcoal on here so that when we bring the mist in, we can rub that out with the eraser. I'm just pulling that across like that to get that beautiful wide, lovely wide misty feeling. It's very gentle, this picture. Now I've got my eraser and I want to whiten up in here. So that's this section here between this green hill and the trees behind it. There's a bit of whiter mist through there. So I just want to lighten that up a little bit. Softly, softly. Beautiful. And then you can use your eraser to get those beautiful swishy marks in the front here. See, we've got that lovely misty sort of shapes, and that's telling us that this is a little hill. There's like a dip down through there. So if you get your eraser, find a clean edge, give it a little knead, and then get a flat sort of edge on it, flat edge like that, and put it down and pull it across in one motion so that you're getting a nice smooth kind of shape like this. My flat edge wasn't flat, obviously, so I need to fix that. So I'll knead it again because we've got to keep kneading to get a clean edge. I'm just going to keep doing these movements until it sort of starts to make some sense. Something like that. And then you can get your fingers into it and just do the same kind of shapes with your fingers and soften off all those lines so that you haven't got hard lines in that misty part there. Feel like just in here needs to be a bit lighter. So you won't get all the charcoal off. If you've pushed it in, it's a little bit harder to remove it, but it will get a bit lighter. So interesting to note all the shapes that are inside this picture. You look at it and think, oh, it's a bit boring, but it's so interesting to note, you know, that line there, the dip in the mist in the foreground, the mist here in front of the mountains. Everything's got a shape, hasn't it? It's quite lovely. Once you finish with that part, then we can move forward and get right down here in the corner and put some grass in. And because the grass is close to us and it doesn't have mist on it, it's a bit more defined. Now, when I do grass, I don't do this, because if you do that, you'll end up with all the same grass, all the same size, unless it's been freshly mowed or it's a golf course. You don't want perfect grass. This is out in the wild. So what I do is I kind of get my stick, I hold it loose in my hand. So not like you're going to be writing, not like that, not tight. Put it at the end of your hand so it's looser and you've got a lot more movement. And then you can just do these beautiful little flicky kind of things like this, overlapping each other. Some are bent, some are straight, some are short, some are tall, some in front, some behind. And that's how I make grass. It looks far more natural than that does. So that's holding your stick too tight and just making the same patterns. This is being looser. And see how that just looks much more natural. So see how you go doing that down in here. Even if little dots here and there can be, you know, tops of grasses or flowers. And just varying that all the way across. And it's actually wider or taller over here on the right. And it sort of wanders off, tapers off to the left, doesn't it? So as you get over to the left-hand side, it's a lot more narrow across the bottom there. Now you can change that if you want. You can make it taller. You can put some flowers in there. I think when we do it in color, we might pop some little white flowers or something in there just for fun. Just makes it a bit more interesting. Gives the eye something else to look at. So that's our grass. And if you find that's maybe too dark, just give it a little dab. So you can adjust the tones with your fingers and your erasers. You can soften it off here and there. I can darken it up again, put more dark in. There's not a lot of detail in that grass, but there is a decent range of tone throughout that. So there's bits of dark and there's bits of light. And that's our picture. Beautiful. So now we've had a look at the tones and the levels of grey or black or whatever. And then now we can sort of start to focus on getting ready for the colour version. So this was our little practice run. Make some more trees in there if you want to. I'm just doing squiggly marks. Because this is so rich and dark, we'll try and keep it fairly dark in there, and that helps to create the drama and the rest of it. All right, let's move on now, and we'll get ready to do the colour version. So keep your notes handy because you're going to be referring to this picture unless you've got it up on the screen. I tend to put it on the screen and then I forget it's there, so I just look at the notes. So that's our little thumbnail. It's a really good idea to do a thumbnail when you're planning a painting. Even if you just, you know, do a little drawing and think, well, maybe that mountain could be taller. You could make it taller. You could make it wider. You know, you can vary things when you do little thumbnails, and you can work out what would be the best composition for this. You know, how else can I change this? Do I reverse it maybe? Do I feel happier if it's going the other way? So there's all these things to consider when you're doing thumbnails, and it's a really good way to just get familiar with your picture, think about composition, and have a little practice and look at your tones, because as I keep telling you, that's really important. Okay, now in the notes I said a good paper colour for this image would be green or red or a neutral purple. Well, guess what? I didn't have any of those in my set. So today we're going beige, but whatever you use will be fine. I thought a neutral would, oh, now my screen's jumping all over the place. Just let me sort that focus out again. I thought a neutral would be a good option because, let me zoom in. Zoom in, please. There we go. Neutral is a good option because it means that the darks and the lights stand out on the neutral tone, and everything will work really well. if you're working on a dark paper, then that will also be fine. You can use some of the dark in the paper for the dark part in the picture. If you're on a light paper, then that would also be fine because you've got lots of beautiful light in the sky. So really, whatever you've got handy, pretty much. So what I'm going to do is tape my paper down. Because I'm filling in the whole page today, when I'm finished, I want to be able to take the tape off and have this nice clean white border. It just looks a little bit tidier. Because pastels are so filthy, if you don't cover the border, you'll end up with pastel all over it and it looks a bit grubby. So if you want to have that nice clean edge, then tape the whole thing down around the sides. What I'm doing at the minute is I'm just sticking some of my tape onto my towel because I don't want it to be too sticky. Sometimes it can tear. And I've torn paintings before when they've been on the board for too long and you rip the tape off and it rips all the way down into this section where you've done your painting. So, and don't tape it down too hard. Just keep it pretty light. But I always try to stick it onto my clothing or something that's nearby just to remove a bit of that adhesive. So just taping this down on the white. And that way, when we're finished, we'll have a lovely clean edge. If I'm feeling lazy, I'll just tape corners and not worry, but it's up to you. Depends on what you prefer. I'll be good today and set an example. There we go. One more to go. Sound like my granddaughter. There you go. Okay. Lovely. Well, that bit was too long. Put it under there. Good. So now I've got that nicely taped down. It's not going to move. I've got a free hand if I need it to grab my water or whatever. Towel. Okay. So we're going to start at the very beginning, as you do, and we're going to put our grid lines on again. So once you've got it all taped up, draw on your grid lines. I'm using charcoal because charcoal comes off easily and it covers easily. So, and it's very soft, so it doesn't dent the paper. Sometimes if you draw on this with a pencil, you press too hard and it leaves a groove and you can't get rid of that. So I find charcoal is my favorite thing to use for drawing up, unless you're on a really dark paper, and then you might want to try a white charcoal pencil or a light colored pastel pencil. So this is the white charcoal pencil, and they're really good too for drawing up. And again, it's a bit softer than a pastel, so it's a bit easier to remove if you want to rub it out or go over it. So that's General's brand. General's make really beautiful charcoal pencils. And if you see them in the art shop, grab yourself a couple because often they're hard to find. So a white charcoal or a normal charcoal. And that's my grid line drawn up. So now I can look at my picture and I can draw it in again. We've already done it once, so we know now where everything's got to go. So again, we can just mark where everything sits. So the hills come off the edge of the page here on the left at about halfway up inside this quarter. And then they go over into the other quarter and they kind of taper off down at around about there. So I can just do my little very light mark. Don't worry about detail because when we put the sky in, we'll overlap this line and you're going to lose it anyway. So we're just being very light and gently marking in probably the more darker sort of areas at this stage. And again, don't worry too much about detail because it's all just going to get lost in the mist. So I'm just marking in sort of lightly where the mist is. And that horizon line back there, it was a 5th, wasn't it? What's this measure again? It's 11.5, so it's about 2 and a bit high. About there, and I'm going to try and make sure it's nice and straight. That straight line all the way across to there. Probably should go a bit further actually. That means this dip's too tall. Dip that down a bit more. Here we go. So just check your drawing. This is the time to get the drawing right. It's not super vital with things like this because you can change lines and things. But when you are drawing things like portraits and animals and stuff, you really want to make sure that the drawing's correct. And this is the time to do that. Don't wait till you start filling it in with pastel because it's too late. So make sure you get your drawing right now. And it's definitely worth spending the time to do that, which I'm notoriously bad at because I'm so impatient. I just want to pick up the colours and have the fun bit. All right, and we've got our little ridge. Don't forget the ridge. It sits about there and it comes down. I might just use the ruler. I know it's not perfectly straight, but sitting down, I find it quite difficult sometimes to get freedom of movement, which is when I'm normally painting, I'll stand at an easel because I just find it so much easier. I've got more movement in my arm and body. So that's what we need to have drawn up at this point. I'm going to duck off for a couple of minutes and I'll come back and then that'll give you time just to get this ready to go. You can also remove your grid lines if you feel like you've got everything where it needs to be, and take those out so that they don't distract too much. And then you've got your picture ready to rock and roll. I will be back in un momento. All right, let's get started. So now we need, just keep a bit of charcoal nearby because you might need that as we move on. Now we need some colours. So these are the colours that I picked out. Now, when I'm choosing my colours, I literally take the picture and I hover it over my pastels. And I think, what do I need? What colours are in here and how can I make it? So this is the palette that I've chosen. And I will just get a bit of paper and show you which colours I've got. So move that over there, put that there, and put that there. I tried to do this in light to dark. We're not quite right, but anyway, near enough. Okay, so I have white. Put some white there. And then I have a light peachy apricot colour. We'll call that apricot. So they're the colours I can see in the sky. And I also picked up, this might be a bit green, but I thought this colour was quite beautiful. Maybe I need blue instead. Let me see if I can find the blue. Is blue going to be better? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Reject that one. And a light blue. So you can see a little bit of light blue just on the horizon there. And there's a lot of that in the mist as well. So they're my misty colours and my sky colours, those three. Then I've got a darker apricot, which I can also see in the sky. So that's quite yummy. Okay, so dark apricot, I guess. Not sure what to call half these colours. Peachy, whatever. So they're the sky colors, aren't they? They've got this beautiful dark orangey color down here at the base with some blue right on the mountain range. And then as it goes up, it gets into the lighter apricot and then possibly up into the white. Maybe a bit of blue in there too. See how we go. All right. And then over here for this other part, like the ground, I've got a bit of orange because I can see orange in the trees on the hill there. It's like an autumn scene. So I thought a bit of orange might be nice just for some fun. You might have something that's not quite so bright. And I've got a pale green, which is also useful for the misty colours on the grass. So pale green. And then I've got this green, which is quite lovely. It's sort of a nice, I don't know, not a lime, well, nearly a lime, but a bit more earthy than that. So that's a lovely, I'll call it lime green. And then this is for the grassy area. So I can see a lot of that color in the grass. And then I've also got this darker green, which I can see in the hills and a little bit in the grass in the foreground there. That'll be nice for underneath those wispy grass blades of grass. So it's a dark green. This one, don't know if I need that, but anyway, it's kind of a more earthy grey green, I guess. Maybe I'll need a different green. You never have the right greens. So try that. I'm just going to see if I can find another. I just want a pretty green. Let me see. I'm going to pop this one in the mix too. So that's yummy. That'll be nice for the trees. I can see some of that green in the trees. So when you're doing trees, you really want to try and have it, 3 or 4 or 5 greens. That's a mid green there. So grab some colours and then we'll get ready to start working on this. I'm going to go and wet my little hand towel. So I've got a place where I can clean my fingers in between colours because we're going to go from light to dark and then we'll be going back to light. So you need to be able to give your fingers a clean as we go. Okay, are we ready? Ready to get cracking? Lovely. Let's do it. So as I said earlier, I like to work from top to bottom when I'm doing a landscape. And I've got the towel here, so occasionally I'll tip up my board like this. I'll bang it on the towel because I need the dust to drop off. Sometimes the dust from the pastels can just sit there and it kind of gets in the way and it won't mix in. And different pastels will do different things. So let's see. Let's start with the sky. We're going to go from the top to the bottom. So at the top, I can see this light apricot color. And then down here, I can see this color. This is that darker apricot. And you've got the light one running across through there. And possibly, let's just fill all this top area up with our light apricot first. And then we can put a bit of blue over the top if you feel like you want to. So a small short piece like this. I like to break all my pastels. If they're long sticks, they kind of they're too long and you can't lie them down flat and get good coverage because they're too clunky. So it's better to chop them off or break them into pieces so that they're a bit more manageable, so that you can do this. Literally wipe them over your paper. Now this is the color fixed paper, so you can see it leaves a lot of texture, and I don't mind that. And a lot of pastel artists will use the texture and just potentially leave the sky or whatever looking like that, which is where the color of the paper comes in really useful. So depending on your paper color, if you've got a blue or something and it's showing through there, you might be really happy and love what that's doing. So by all means, leave it. You know, don't feel you have to fill it all up. I'm just a filler-upper, and some people are not. So it just depends on what you prefer. If you like that lovely loose look, then, you know, it could be quite perfect for you. So you've got to find your own patterns and styles, I suppose. However, I'm going to blend this in. I want to push it right in, and I want to fill up my sky with this color, and then I can put the other colors over the top of it. I've left this area down here sort of empty because I'm going to put some blue across there. I can see some very pale blue right there across the back of the horizon line. So I'll leave that for now, but I just want to start at the top. When I'm doing a big area like this, I use 3 fingers and I literally wipe them across like this. So because I'm doing a big wide sky, I want to do wide movements. So I'm running my fingers across and I'm leaving them on the paper. So try not to do this. Doing that will just create uneven marks and fingerprints in the painting. So what you want to do is keep the fingers on the page, like literally don't lift them up, just leave them there and keep pulling across like this. Work from the top and come down. And that way we'll get a lovely smooth kind of sky. Now, one layer will probably not be enough. You can see on mine that it's gone a bit thin. Now, again, you can leave it like that. If that looks great for you and it suits what you're doing, you can potentially leave it just like that and do no more to it. Or you can add some more pastel. So what I want to do now is get a bit more of this pale apricot, so same color, and put a bit more on it, sort of thicken it up a bit. Okay, you can see all that dust there gathering on my page. So depending on the brand and the type of pastel it is, will depend on how much dust it drops. And now I just want to rub that in again. So I just want to make it nice and rich and smooth and thick so that it's got lots of beautiful pastel on there that I can kind of move around. When you get lots on there, then you can kind of work with it. It's like having a loaded paintbrush. If you don't have enough on there, you can't do anything. All right, so that's looking quite lovely. Now I want to pick up my darker apricot colour, and I'm just going to wipe that across this section here. See where it's a little bit darker in the picture? Just in a stripe on its side again, a short piece on its side, so I get a nice even kind of spread. Doesn't quite go all the way to the end of the page, so I've sort of stopped about there. Coolio. And then I'm going to put a bit more on because I want to. I really like the colours in this sky. See all the dust gathering here at the end? I can try and push that in, but if it doesn't want to go in, I'll have to tip it off. So now I've got my apricot darker tone through here. So same thing, 3 fingers and just pull it across like this. And as you pull it up into the lighter section, keep your fingers on the page so you're trying to create that gentle gradation or graduation of the light into the dark. So I've literally pulled it up like this. And then as I get up into the top area where it's lighter, I lift off a little bit so I'm not pressing as hard. Same down here, so pushing it across like this. And then as I go up into the light sky, I'm lifting off slightly. I'm still touching the paper, but I'm not pressing as hard. So it's a softer sort of gentle blend of colours. I like how that's looking. It's come up really nice. I'm just going to pull a bit of that down now into my lower area down here. Beautiful. And then I'm going to grab my little blue one. This is my light blue that we had. I like what that does on the horizon line. I think that looks rather lovely. Now, be aware that when we mix this with this apricot colour, it's probably going to go a bit purpley. Because the apricot's got some red in it, when you mix red and blue, you make purple. So just be aware of that. So let's see what happens. I'm going to wipe my blue across like this. So wiping it across all the way to the mountain. Make sure you overlap the edge of the mountain because we don't want a gap between the mountain and the sky. We want it to look like the sky's going behind that hill. I'll call it a mountain. It's probably just a hill. Bit of blue through there. That's nice. And same thing. Now we want to sweep it across and blend it in and make it smooth as it goes up into the apricot colour. Let's see how we go. 3 fingers, pulling it across like this. I'm just doing, again, keeping the fingers on the page. I'm starting down the bottom where it's bluest, and I'm going to gradually keep pulling my finger left and right, and ooze up slowly, slowly into that apricot section. By keeping your fingers on the paper like this and then gently pulling that blue up, you're creating a really gentle gradient from one colour to the other. See how that's gone into this beautiful apricot down and sort of a purpley tinge in here and then down into the blue. I think that's rather lovely. So the secret is to keep your fingers on the paper, okay? Don't lift them up. Just lighten your touch as you move up into here where the colours merge, and that way you get a beautiful blend without any hard lines. We don't want stripes. So if you're getting stripes between the blue and the apricot, you might need a little bit more pastel if it's not kind of merging together properly. So put some more pastel on your paper down the bottom where it's bluest, across like that, okay? And same thing, back and forth, left to right, and as you do, just move up gently into the apricot. So 3 fingers, flat, pulling. Imagine this is a wide brush, and we're just pulling it up into the apricot because we want a smooth transition between those colours. Now that's looking very much like a sunrise sky. Gorgeous. And if you want to, I was going to put a bit of blue up in here. I just want to see what happens if I do. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I just want to see. It kind of looks a bit bluish up the top, just lightly. I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of blue just across there, softly, softly. And then I'm going to blend that down, top down, into the apricot. That's nice. So it's amazing what you can do with really subtle changes of colour. Quite like what's happening there. And what's going on over here? Does that look a bit muddy in there? You've got to be careful not to make mud when you mix your colours together. When I say mud, I mean kind of dirty colours, greys, that kind of thing, especially in sky, because this is a pure, beautiful sky. Can you see there's some little clouds back there? My gumboots, how are we going to put them in? Are we going to put them in? Do we have to? No, but let's see what happens. So see that back here, there's little purpley coloured clouds far away in the distance. You can hardly see them. Now, if you're not feeling brave, don't worry about putting them in, but I'm just going to see what happens if I put my apricot there. Just a few little lines like that where the clouds are. Because the apricot with the blue make purple, so maybe we can do this without having to find another pastel. I'm just going to gently, with one finger, push it in lightly, lightly like that. Little fluffy movements. bit too stripy, isn't it? If it is too stripy, I can just press a bit harder and fade them off a bit. I think that'll do. I might just leave it like that because it's far, far away. So we can let them just sit there off in the distance. If you do want to have a bit more definition on your clouds, then you can try, repeat that process. So I could now come back over with the blue. Might be too light, we'll see. Bit of blue. Oh, I like that. Now it looks like it's got sunshine or something on it. I like what happened then. So have a play if you want to, see what happens. And I just literally touched the blue one. I've got it lying down on its side so I get a soft mark. So flat on the page, but just using the edge rather than the whole side. Pull it across like that, and then it's a little bit too light, but I can very lightly just push it in softly, softly. And we've got clouds far away in the distance. Have fun. Now I'm going to tip off my dust because it's gathering on the sides here. All right. So that's the sky. Done. On ski. So now we've got to put in that horizon line right at the back. That's this little row of trees all the way at the back there. Now let's look at the color of those. They're kind of a grey green. So let's grab this darker grey green that we had before. Now, what I'm going to do is put some down, but not a lot, because I don't want it to be too dark. The really dark parts need to be in here. I've lost my line again. If you've lost your line, because we will every time you overlap something, just get your charcoal and put that horizon line back in just so you can find it again. Sometimes it's easier just to draw it back in so you don't lose your way or go crooked. It's really easy to go crooked. So draw in your charcoal line, then get your darkish grey green. Now it might not be as dark as mine, depending on your pastels. And I'm just using the end of it now because I don't want a big wide mark. I just want small squiggly little marks. And I'm just going to do this with my stick. So I'm putting the end down on the page and I'm just wiggling it along that line. Do little wiggles, trying to create a soft tree line that looks a bit like trees, hopefully. And I think it's nice if you have a bit of a gap between some and it doesn't keep, it's not completely blocked in either. So you can see a little bit of sky maybe through some of those trees. So that's cute. All the way to there. Try to vary the height a little bit. Now see that it's just a fine, fine line of shapes, isn't it? Little squiggly shapes. Now the risk here, as you can see, I've already got dust, dirty dust from this color in my sky. We could pretend it's a bird. Could well be a bird. I'm going to try and get that off without touching it. The minute you stick your fingers into it, it's going to stick and put a big dirty stain in your sky. So I'm going to try and tip it off. And if that doesn't work, it's going to be a bird. Let's see. Ooh, it nearly all came off. Awesome. I've still got a tiny dot there. So what the other thing you can do then is get your blue or the color of your sky and just lightly go over it so that it disappears. Okay, so be very careful when you're putting dark against light like that, that you don't get too much dark into your sky. And if you do, you'll have to kind of go over it a bit. The reason we started with the sky and we're working downwards is if you needed to get back in behind this stuff with your sky color, it's really hard with pastel because it's so chunky. It would be difficult to get in behind all those little squiggly bits to put the sky in. So that's why it went in first. And then this goes over the top of it. So you've got that lovely continuous blend between the sky and the tree line. Now, we're going to be careful here. We're going to use the pad of our finger. All right, I'm going to try my ring finger with this one, no ring. And literally what I'm going to do is soften it off a little bit. So I want to blur it off a little bit. I'm just going to dab it like this. I'm just dabbing. I'm not blending. I'm just dabbing lightly. And see how that's softening off that darkness a little bit. Because it's got fog or mist around it, I just want to lighten it off and grey it down a little bit. Because it's far away too, we need to soften it a bit. See how that's softening now? And it's already accidentally looking like some trees, which is really cool because we're getting shadow and light through there. So little dabs, put the pad of your finger on the edge of the trees and just, I'm sort of pulling down slightly, but I'm dabbing and lifting to blur it off a little bit. So again, this is another technique that comes in handy for doing things like this. Okay, so that looks all right. We talked about blenders last week. Let me find one. Can't find my best one, so this will do. This is just a little Montmartre brand. Montmartre's good for cheap stuff, not for pastels or paper, but for stuff like this, they're pretty good. So if your fingers are chunky, you could actually get your little blender and zhoosh it around in here like this. What that does is it kind of pushes the pastel around. Depending on how you use it, you can push it in to make it stick, or you can blend it to soften it off. But you can use that to create softer marks in your tree line if you have one. They're good to have. These come in a set of 6, I think. They've all got different tips on them. Some are pointy, some are not. So that's a good option too if you've got chunky fingers or if you want to get into the tiny areas like this. I'm quite happy with how that's looking. I think I'm going to leave it like that because it's quite soft. And I want to put a bit of mist around in front here as we move down. So tipping off more dust. Coolio. Okay. So that's nice. I've got my little row of trees in the back and that's sitting up against that beautiful blue sky now. So I really like what that looks like. You've got to keep assessing as you go. Keep checking everything as you go and making sure that you're happy with it. Of course, you can always come back and touch things up and redo things, definitely. But it's just easier if you don't have to, right? Right. Okay, let's look at this bit in here now. So this section in here in front of our tree line is all misty, isn't it? It's quite light through there. And as I said earlier, that's where the sweet spot is, where the darkest dark meets the lightest light, right there in the middle. So we're just going to get a bit misty through here. And then we're going to put the mountains in. But this is the next layer that's got to be done. If we're working from top to bottom, this is the next bit. So pick up your blue. We're not going to go to white. We'll save the white for last. This is my little blue one that I used in the sky. And I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of that across here like this because I want to get this area pretty light. And we'll have to come back over this later on when we get the green stuff in front just to mist that off a bit more. So a bit of my light blue through here. Just do a light coat like that. And then I'm going to pick up this light apricot, which is the one we started with in the sky. And I want to wipe some of that over too, because this will create that lovely purpley kind of tone. So again, just putting that over light. I haven't blended anything yet. I'm just layering pastel over pastel at the moment. What happens when you do that is the sticks themselves actually start to blend with whatever's on the page. And they often will pick up the other color too. So just be aware of that when you're putting it back down again. Cool. All right, now I'm going to wipe my fingers because we've got to get in here and it's a light color. And if you've got dirty fingers, you might need to give them a little clean. So we don't want to have dirty mist. And I'm going to pick up think that's white. Actually, it looks like it's pale blue, but anyway, we'll pick up some of that and put that in this section here where it's whitest. So remember where the mountain and the light meet is our light spot through there. So I just want to lighten that up a little bit more than the rest of it. Put that back down. I don't know if that is white. It's hard to tell sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes you get a really pale blue or something, you think it's white until you find a white. Let me see. Just going to test that theory. Oh yeah, I think it is white. Or is it? No, it's not. See? I put white on top of that. Now it's whiter. Cool. All right. Whiten it off if you want to. Now we're going to blend this the same way that we did the sky. So we need wide movements. And we're going to start from one end and go across and then come back, and keep your fingers on there because we want to get this lovely and soft and smooth. All right. And we want to fill up all the paper. So I'm going to start over here. You can see it's a little bit darker on the right side, and then it goes across here and gets light. So let's start over here. And just go gently, gently, softly, softly, pulling it across. And try to maybe overlap that tree line a little bit so the mist looks like it's coming up in front of it. Softly, softly. Remember, we can put more colour down if we need to. So usually the first coat won't be enough. It's just a good foundation to get started. That's looking nice. Lovely and soft through there. Got more dust to get rid of. Then before I do, now I'm going to come back in with my very light blue or white. We'll say it's white. And I just want to get a little bit of white. See, there's almost stripes through there, like layers of fog or mist. So just draw on some light lines like this. See, this pastel touched my apricot pastel, so now it's put apricot in there. They get they rub together and pick up colours from each other. Now I've got my two lines in there. I can pull that across again. So just gently blending that across to create a lovely soft kind of range of thicknesses of fog, because it's all different thicknesses, isn't it? And that middle section, so the fog here seems to come up a little bit higher into the horizon line. So I'm just going to blur over that a little bit. Now, if putting your pastel over it like this might be enough, you might not need to blend it anymore. Maybe it's looking foggy enough without having to stick your fingers in it. Up to you. Again, depends on the style that you like. I'm going to put my fingers in there because I want to soften it off a little bit more. Just very gently. I'm not pressing very hard because what I want to do is try and keep that light fog on top of that mountain range. I don't want to blend them in together, if that makes sense. So it's gone up into my sky area. See how easy it is to get your sky area dirty or stained. So I'm just going to get my blue sky pick colour and just put a bit more of that there so that it doesn't look like it's got a stain on it. I quite like how that worked. I think that looks quite good with the mist coming up into this section here. It's a little bit of green showing through. There's a little bit of misty sort of blue. I quite like what's happening with that. So I'm going to leave that as it is because that makes me happy. So just decide on whether you need to mist yours up a little bit more, or if you're happy with how it looks, if you want to blend it or not blend it. But just remember, when you're going over this tree line, don't press too hard or you'll make mud. We just want to go really softly, really soft. That's nice. Now we've got to study the rest of this mist. As it comes down around this section here, see how it's getting darker through there? And then we've got a little row of trees that's connected to this mountain or hill. So it's got a kind of grayish area through there under the mist. So let's pop a bit of this grey green, just a smidge through there. I just want to smidge it off like this, just a very light touch. It's very strong, so I don't want to dirty it up too much, but I just do want to darken it down a little bit. So a little bit of the grey green, and then gently just pushing that through the misty bit. I'm going to pull it up again. I'm just going to wipe my finger off a bit. I don't want too much on my finger. And then just pull it up. So coming across like this and then going upwards into the mist a bit, just to get that lovely soft edge again. And pulling it the whole length of the thing would be a good idea, Jeanne, because otherwise you're putting fingerprints through there. So softening off that beautiful misty section through there with a bit of green under or over it. If you want to then come back over with your pale blue or your light colour to mist off on top of that darker green that we've just done, you can do that too. So we can put a little bit of light over the green now and then gently push that through. Ooh, lovely. So very soft touch today, nothing too strong or hard. That's looking quite nice. It'll make more sense once we get all the other bits in. Okay. All right. Now, what we're going to do next is put our mountain in. This will be the fun bit. I like doing mountains and trees and stuff. So, what colours do we need for our mountain? We've already got our grey green. We've got a few greens here. So I've got a light, a mid, a dark, another dark. So they're going to be all my mountain colours in there. And a bit of orange for the trees. So it looks like autumn. And the orange will brighten it up too. It'll just give it a bit of zing, make it a bit more interesting. So let's start with our dark grey-green. This can be our base colour that we're going to put down under our trees. So when you look at this, you've got to think, okay, the stuff under the trees is dark because it's in shadow. So we need to put that in first, excuse me. Then we can build the trees on top. So grab your grey-green and we're going to draw our line back in of our mountain edge, just loosely for now. So it sort of must go a bit like this. Just do it lightly across like that. Kind of want to find the outline of the hill. If you want to go a bit taller, you can. A bit wonkier, a few lumpy bits for the trees. We just want to mark that in lightly. If you don't want to use pastel, use charcoal. Charcoal's good for getting the drawing back into things. And I'm going to continue it across here. So right across here, we've got some trees that go through there. Can you see that? Now that's where we just did that dark misty stuff. So we can soften that off and blur that in a little bit more when we get back to it. But that's continuing that tree line from the hill. Okay. Now, once you've got that drawn on, we want to fill it all in. So remember, where does the mist come to? Let's mark in where the mist sits. So we've got mist about here and then down through about there. So if we mark in that area there, that's where the light mist has to come across on top of this hill at the base of it. So we can get really dark and strong up in this section. And then as we come down, we'll get softer or lighter. And then we can pull the mist up over it afterwards. So let's fill this in. This pastel is an Art Spectrum Extra Soft Square. So they come in around about this size. The ends worn off a bit. But they're really good because they've got flat sides. They've got a thinner side and a wider side. And they've got good ends on them. So they're good for edges. You can use the square edge to do a line, or you can fill it in really easily because they're nice and big and chunky, or you can use the end to draw a line. So the extra soft Art Spectrum squares are quite good, and that's their newer version of pastels. They have others that are the round ones that have been around for years, and these are reasonably new. Well, probably not new anymore, but they're quite lovely to work with, and they're also a bit softer. So they'll fill the tooth up faster, but you can get lovely coverage with them. So I'm just bringing this all the way down through here. Don't worry about the trees, we'll put them in after. I'm just getting our background in first. It's lovely, lovely and dark. Once you've got some pastel on the page, we're going to do the usual and blend it in. But this time you don't have to go wide because the trees are bumpy and lumpy, so we can actually do squiggly sort of marks. So think about the thing that you're painting and then move your fingers in the direction of the thing. So because these are little trees, I'm just going to do wiggly kind of filling in shapes. Again, I don't know whether it's just a habit I've got or what it is, but I just tend to leave my finger on the page when I'm doing this, just so that I don't get broken marks and it's all consistent. I find that works much better. So see how you go doing that. I know a lot of people do this dabby thing, and I think it's just second nature to do it that way. But if you can make yourself keep your finger or hands on the page, you get a much more consistent mark. Now, all those squiggly things probably won't even matter at the end of the day because we're going to go over it, but it's still sort of, I think anyway, I think it helps to create the texture or the feeling of the thing that you're doing. Now, as I come across over here, because I've already got some misty colours, this is going nice and grey, and that's what I wanted. So it's kind of mixing a little bit and blurring off. Then I can blur this off here with my finger. I can just lightly run over it and soften all those edges, and then harden up these edges over here that are sharper and in front of the fog. So just blocking all of this in. Just going to put a bit more green down through here. So down around where the fog is going to come and overlap up here, we're still going to get some green underneath it so that it looks convincing. We can't just go from green to white. It's got to merge again. So making sure we get enough of a foundation colour down through here to give us that beautiful depth. So filling it all in. You can see I've got a lot of dust sitting on there, rubbing all my fingerprints off. Now, again, see it around the edges there, it's dust. It's getting up into my sky. Try really hard not to touch that. The minute you touch it, it's going to stick. So I'm going to do my best to tip it off and hope it doesn't stain. Phew, that was lucky. Didn't stain. Good. See how that's already starting to get some depth in there, because we've on this side over here, I've already got my misty light tones, and so when I dragged the green over, kind of merged with that and went all soft and beautiful. That's exactly what we want it to do, isn't it? That looks so lovely and soft now. Quite like that. So I'm quite tempted to leave that as is. I really don't want to come in and define anything else much. There are a couple of little trees here on the far right. These guys over here, right on the halfway line that you can see. But we might try some other greens with those. All right, so I'm just going to come back now. I'm looking at the top of the hill against the sky, and it's got a lot of little trees there, obviously. So we want to I want to try and roughen that up a little bit more so that it's good, looks like trees. So similar to what we did on the horizon line, those little squiggly marks that we did, just little, put the tip of your pastel down on the edge and just sort of wiggle it along, up and down, leave some gaps, just to try and create that lovely natural tree line. It doesn't have to be all over the place, and it's only got to be tiny, little tiny squiggly bits. And just check the picture and see where it's darkest. So maybe you can press a bit harder in those darker areas. Down here in the front, it's sort of dark through here, and then it goes off into the mist. So let's get some more dark down in here, just to emphasize the shadows and the shapes a little bit more. See how that's working? So when you come back over the same color, after we've pushed it in, it's mixed in with a bit of the misty sort of color and gone a bit lighter, but now coming back over it, we're starting to create some lovely tone through there with the darks on top of the lighter tones. That's nice. I like what's happening there. Again, I'm going to tip off some of my dust. So I've got this lovely edge now, which I'm really happy with. I quite like what that does. So tipping off the dust, and when you tip it, another tip, tip it downwards. So don't tip it upwards, because if I went upwards, all that stuff will go into the sky. So tip it downwards. Another reason I like to work from top to bottom with a landscape is that the dust drops down. So as you work your way down the page, you're not putting dust on the rest of it. So had we, done all the foreground first and then done the sky, you'll find that you'll get bits of sky color down in here, and then you've got to fix it. So I just find it's easier to start at the top and work down, and then you don't have to worry about pastel dust falling into areas where you don't want it. All right, are we ready to get some more green in here? I sure am. Now, when you're doing trees like this in the distance, it's literally just little squiggly shapes, isn't it? We're not doing every leaf. So look at the shape of the trees, and putting my pastel flat on the page again, little short stick flat on the page. And I'm just going to run around this hill, not literally, with my pastel and dab on some different green in different areas, and see how that's now starting to look like a lush tree-covered hill. So leave gaps and try not to make patterns. That's really hard, I know. But try to kind of change the shapes that you're drawing with this particular green, and leave gaps in between. But again, try to keep them more random. Try not to get too caught up in making the same shapes and the same patterns. It's really hard not to, because we're people and we do. So that's already starting to look nice and tree-ish. And then you can grab, what's this one? This is my lighter green. So I'm just going to dab a little bit of that around now. I don't want too much of this because I don't want it to be too light, but I do want some highlights here and there. So again, I can just put a little bit of that on, and I'm going to have to push it in and blend it a little bit just to push it back. But for now, I'm just going to dab it on because I know I can blend it off and muddy it down a little bit. So I'm not worried if it looks too bright this stage. Just a few little light bits through there, like that. It's definitely far too bright, but that's okay. We can fix it. What I like to do is get the color on first, and then I've got something to work with. So you need to get the color down there, and then we can push it around a little bit. But just for fun, I'm going to add some of this orange. Remember we said there's some orange in the trees there? And pastels are great because they're so crumbly often. You can just dab it like that and get these really lovely little shapes and sections of colour. I don't know if that orange is rich enough. Maybe I need something a bit darker. Probably too light, I think. Anyway, I'm going to have a look for a darker one. I just want to zhoosh a bit of this orange around, and I'll go find a darker one so I can get over it. Probably more like a terracotta, this one. It's a little bit darker. Yeah, that's good. So if you don't get the right color first time round, just go grab another one. It's not, you know, you're not stuck with one palette. You can pick up more colors and mix them around, see what happens. So that orange will be nice. That'll give us a nice little variation of tone and color in there. So I literally just drop it down on the page and zhoosh it, little zhoosh. When you don't want a big wide mark as wide as the stick, just tilt it a little bit. So I'll show you on a light piece because I'll do this in the green that we're going to be putting in this section. So this is when it's like flat on the page and it's quite a wide kind of mark. But if I want to go a soft mark like that, so see how I put orange all over, oh, all over my pastel, never mind. If I want a soft mark, but not as wide as that, then I can just, I tilt it. I put my finger at this end, and if you're right-handed, you might do it the other way around, and just slightly lift off that end. So I've still got this top end touching, lift off a little bit, and then I can just get a nice soft mark. So depending on the sticks too, if you've got a, you know, a round one or a square one, that they all do different things. But it's really just about how you hold the sticks and the way you move it in your hand. So flat down or slightly tilted for a softer mark. You can use the end then to get a line, like a sharp edge to get a line. There's all sorts of ways you can use it. So it's really just about how you hold it on the paper and what part of the stick you use, and also how much pressure you put down. So if I press down harder on the end and tilt, I'll get a more definite mark. It's just getting to know the pastels and how to move them around in your hands. You don't need to do this bit. I was just showing you an example. All right, let's get back into this tree business because I'm hoping you've got some in there now. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to blend, because if I blend all that in, it's just going to turn a dirty brown color and be quite yucky. What we want to do is just push it gently with our fingers. So dabbing like this. This is where you do lift off. Okay, so I'm dabbing it like this because this is going to help me create trees, little dabby marks. So just imagine you've got a stipple brush, one of those little brushes with a flat edge, and you're putting it flat on there and just dabbing it. And what that does is it blends all the pastel in a little bit, but you still retain the colors. And see how it's dulling down that light green now, which is what I wanted to do. I didn't want that to be too bright. So literally just dabbing like this. And we're softening off and we're making trees. That's looking very tree-ish now. So dabbing, 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 dabbing. There's so many different ways you can use your fingers to make pastels do different stuff. I'm really happy with how that's looking. If you feel like you want to add a bit more bright or something's too light and you want to darken it, just give it a dab, or you can grab your dark green again. Where did I put that? Over there. Grab your dark green again and darken off in some areas if you want to. If you feel like there's too much light or too much color, just get your dark green back out and zhoosh that around here and there, and then dab again. So now we've created this beautiful hill full of lush trees with some autumn colors in there. You might want to add a bit more autumn. You could touch up some of those orange parts if you want to make it a little bit brighter, like that, up to you. So have a little play and mix around some greens. Again, when you dab the pastel, rather than doing dots or lines, you can just dab it onto your page like that. Just dab it. And you make all these little dots because the pastel paper has texture, and the pastels are so bumpy and lumpy anyway. How fun's that? That's a beautiful mountain. I love it. I've got this other dark green that I haven't used yet. I just want to see what that looks like. Is it any darker than what I had? It is a little. All right, might throw some of that in too, just for some more contrast. So don't be afraid to grab other colors if you want to. You know what would be nice in here is a deep purple for some shadows. If you want to grab a dark, dark purple, that would be pretty cool. I do love my dark purples. So we'll have a little play with that. Just going to put some of this mid-green back in. Don't overdo it. The paper will fill up and then you won't be able to get any more on. So just go carefully. I'm going to leave that right there. When you get to the end, like when I just did then, I just dabbed some of this mid-green on, which is quite a lovely warm green. And you can let that sit then. You don't even have to push it in if you just want to let it stay on the surface like that. It just helps to create texture and foliage. Beautiful. All right, I'll tip off my dust again because I've got some in the sky. I didn't want to do that. All right, lovely. So that's our lovely, rich, dark mountain. How beautiful. Now we've got to start to look at this foggy bit in front of it. Okay, so we're working our way down the page. This area is all quite light, much like it was back there. So we're going to use the same kinds of colors and we're going to sweep across here in front of the mountain. And then we're going to put the green grass in the front. So what are we going to use for mist? This one is pale blue. I'm going to go with the pale blue because I can lighten it if I need to. I can add some white to lighten it, and I can add some purple or apricot to darken it. So I've got my edge drawn in here. That's where I know my green grass sort of little hill bit sits. So let's put some white or blue, sorry, light blue across here. And again, I'm just going to pull a little bit of it up into that little dark line across there. Okay, and then we're coming down, we're following this edge. If you overlap the line a little bit, that'd be good because we don't want to have a gap between our grass and our fog. And literally just wiping it on, all right? So we're not blending yet. Wiping it on, and as you come up into the hill here, it's going to start picking up the green off the mountain. The stick will, your pastel stick will. So you might want to wipe it off with a bit of paper towel or your little hand towel or something on the dry end, just to get that dirty green off the blue if you want it to be nice and clean to continue across here. I don't mind it getting a bit dirty because it kind of is anyway. And I'm going to pull it up through there and all the way across to here. And then put a bit down in here too, because we're going to put some green in there after. So that's kind of where our mist has to go. And you can see as it comes up here onto the hill, it kind of merges with the colours in there. And that's okay, because that's what's happening anyway. It's kind of, we can see through it and we can see those trees behind the mist. Just soften off that edge between the mist and the trees. Make sure it's not a hard line and that you're kind of pulling the pastel up into it a little bit, just as you come across there. So it's kind of soft. So then we can kind of merge them together gently and create a soft edge like we did with the sky. Okay, blob there, get rid of that. Cool. So if we've got that wiped on, you want to clean your finger off now because we're going into the light colours. So grab your towel or your wet one or whatever you have there, just to make sure we've got nice clean fingers. Well, cleanish. That's cleanish. And we're going to start to pull this mist across. So same sort of thing as we did before. It's got to be wide and pulling across. And as you come across this section over here, just gently pull it up, but keep your finger on the paper. So we're pulling it up sort of in front of this row of trees now. I'm keeping my finger on the paper. And then I'm just coming across, just doing one finger because it's a smaller area. Coming across like this, back and forth, left to right, softly misting up around here. I'm just going to do the lighter part first. So all the way down to there. That's kind of the lighter mist through there, because the other stuff overlaps the tree. So that's where we've got to be quite careful and light with our touch. Pulling that across through there like that. It's going to need some white, I think. But anyway, we'll finish this off first. So once you've pulled that across through there and blended it in, make sure you're pulling it horizontally so we get that beautiful wide ground cover mist. And now we're going to bring it up into here. So a little bit like we did over here, we want to soften the edges and sort of pull it up, but don't go too far because we still want the strength of this beautiful mountain here. So I'm just going to do soft little wiggly movements like this, but don't press too hard so that the mist kind of sits on top of the trees. All right, I just want to make it really gentle. Soft edges so they kind of disappear away. No hard lines. It's all soft and romantic. How's that looking? Not too bad. I feel like I need to press a bit harder in here just to get that mottly look smoother. So I can just go a little bit harder through there. And then pulling this down. Lovely. All right, now I'm going to add white. Where's my white? So I want to lighten off in here. If you have a look at the picture, you can see across here is lighter. See how white that looks against the blue now? And then over here, we've got a little bit of white or light. So I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of white around, and then I can push that through as well. So we're doing a few layers here of our blue and white. Okay, again, pulling it across like this. So make sure you run your finger, keep it on the page, and keep running it left to right and pulling it around to get that beautiful continuous kind of feeling. I've got some dust on my page I need to get rid of. But before I do, I'm just going to come back over now. The bottom of my mountain here, I just want to get a bit more mist up in here. This is my light blue. I'm just zhooshing it around over the top of this very softly. So I don't want to put too much pastel down. I just want a little bit more that I could push it in. You might already have enough on there, I don't know. But just see how you feel about that. And then just softly pushing it in like this so that we're getting that beautiful gradual change in colour. It's looking nice, nice and misty. We'll put a bit more down here. I feel like this line between the mountain and the mist is too straight. So I'm just going to curve that a little bit. And now I want to kind of push this in a bit more because it's looking a bit mottly. I'm just going to press a bit harder to get rid of those little holes through the mist there. So I want it to be smooth. So when you want a smooth finish, press harder and it'll push the colour into the paper and hold on to it. See how that's lovely and soft? I'm wiping my finger off in between tones here just because I don't want to get too much dirty colour in through my clean misty colours. I'm pushing this around. If you need to add more white or blue, do that. So in here you can see it's gone a bit muddy, but I don't mind that. I think it looks quite nice and transparent. So I'm going to leave that as it is. It's quite nice. beautiful mist. I'm going to tip off my dust again. Tip it downwards so it can't land in my sky. Okay, nice, nice, nice. All right. So now we've got to move forward and think about this grass in the foreground. So the grassy colour, I think, is about that limey kind of green colour. I've also got a light green, that's this guy. He can run across there and they can play together, those two colours, so they'll be nice together to bring the grass forward. And it sort of comes down and around there. And then we've got another little dip through here, haven't we? Just marking in those shapes that I can see. One there. And we've got our big one that runs down here. Hopefully I can get it reasonably straight. This sits in front of the mist, so it's quite a firm line. Still got a bit of mist around it, but we can use our light green to do that. So I'm just going to block in the whole area with my limey green or my mid green, grassy green colour. It's got a bit of a yellow tinge to it, this one, this colour. But we need to get some colour down so we've got something to play with. This little stick is a Blue Earth, that's the brand. It's called Blue Earth, and they do the most beautiful creamy pastels. And you can buy sets. This was a set of greens. I think it was like 28 different greens in the one box. It's pretty beautiful. And I do love this brand. They're so creamy, but they do fill up pretty fast. They fill the paper up quickly. So the creamier your pastels, the more they'll fill the paper. If they're harder and drier, then you'll be able to get a lot more on. And you can't get hard ones over soft ones as easily. So just remember that. Go from hard to soft when you're building up your layers. So you want to start with your harder ones if you want to have lots and lots of layers. And then put your soft ones on at the end because they're the ones that sit on the top and shine. Anyway, this one's soft, so it's just going to fill up pretty fast, but that's okay because there's not really a lot of contrast in here. So once you've filled up this area with your green, do the same thing. We're going to rub it in and we're going to do the sideways thing again. So keeping your finger on the paper and make sure you try to get that edge there fairly sharp-ish, because we want to bring this bit of grass to the foreground. It's in the front now, so we're getting more definite with our marks and our shapes, and then pushing this around like this. So it's got this beautiful little, I don't know, dip in it over here, so I can pull my finger around in that direction. So I'm using 3 fingers just because it's quicker, really, to fill it all in with a wider brush or 3 fingers, whichever. So not using brushes, but imagine you would use a nice big wide brush to fill this area in, not a little squitsy one. So use 3 fingers. There we go. So I've got my grass marked in. I'm going to continue this across here like this into the mist. So this line comes down and it kind of dips up a tiny bit just through here. Instead of putting more pastel on just yet, and I might still have to, but I want to try and just pull this down here like this with my fingers and lift off as I get into this light section here. I'll try and create the feeling of that little dip of the hill. Now, if that's not working, let's just see. Maybe I need a bit more pastel on here. So sometimes you might just need a tiny bit that'll pull through a little bit further. So you can put a little bit down and then pull it around like that to create that lovely feeling of the dip in the earth. And then this bit in here, interestingly, stayed light. How lucky am I? So you can see on the picture, See that bit there? It's like a dip of the grass and there's a bit of mist or fog behind it. And then we can slightly see that hill there, or mound, and then the fog behind that. So I've got a nice bit of fog just through here, which is a bit cute. So I will zhoosh that up a bit more with some white. And I'm going to pull that through over my grass so that it's kind of sitting there on top. Looks like the mist or the fog's creeping up the hill. Lovely. All right, so just pushing all of this in, making sure you've got that lovely green base on there. And then we've got this light green. This is my paler green, the same brand, probably out of the same box. And I'm just going to pull that around. You can see on the picture, we've got sort of stripes almost of light green and then the mid green, different tones of greens running through there in a stripe kind of pattern. So let's pull this light green around here like this. So put that on, nice wide mark, just like that. And then I'm going to put a bit more of it. It's quite light over this side on the left, so I'll put a bit more of that over there. And up through here. So I've got a bit of light green there now on my grass. So I'm going to pull that across too now. So lots of pulling today, lots of pulling in wide marks in that direction. So lovely sweeping kind of movement with your fingers. So you get that continuous blend of colours. See how that's blended in really nicely? And then I can come to this side of it and blend again. So what's happening is it's picking up the pastel that's already there and adding it into that light green that we've just put down. So it's creating a really nice blend. And then I can do the same thing on this side and just pull it across. 3 fingers flat on the page, pulling that across like that. Lovely. And now we've got lovely, smooth, grassy, kind of hilly thing happening. I'm just going to come down here and put a bit more of this on through there. And I don't know if you can see it, but on this grass section on the right side, we've got a bit more greeny kind of tinges up through here. It's similar to what's in the grass in the front. So I just want to zhoosh a bit of this mid-green, that's my mid-green, onto that, just a tiny bit. And I'll push it in so it's not too strong. I just want to get a little bit of that in there too, because that'll tie it in with the foreground with the grass then. Everything's got to sort of connect with everything. So it just gives it a little bit of tone, a different shade of green through that section there. You might want to add a bit more of your first green, that lovely limey kind of green, if you feel like you want to touch it up a bit more, or you want to add more of this darker green. Just have a little play with the grass, see what happens. If you don't like something, you can go over it with a different color and change it. It's not set in stone. So you can have a little play with that. I want to go a bit darker back here as well. Always refer to your picture. Like, you spend more time analysing your reference photo than you do actually painting. So study, study, study. Looking, looking, always looking. Lovely. All right, tipping off dust. Too much green in my fog over there. Blended it in and made a mess. Never mind. All right, now we're going to go down into this foreground and do some grass. So as I said earlier, we've got these little grassy areas down through here. I'm just going to zhoosh this on here like this because I want to get some darker green at the back of the grass or in the shadows, sort of make it look like it's got some shadow. So I'm literally lying my little soft green pastel, my mid green, down on the paper like that and just running it up and down all the way across, because we've got grass all the way over to there. So just go up and down, but that creates a soft edge. And it also helps to start to look a little bit grassy already. Up and down like that. I'm going to go a bit taller and a bit shorter and just vary the height a little bit. You can make your grass more grass if you want. If you want to add more grass to the foreground and not so much of that smooth grass, and take it up a little bit higher. See, by just running that up and down like that on its side, it's already starting to look grassy. Kind of cool. And I didn't press very hard, so that's just pressing lightly. It's picking up the texture of the paper and also the texture of the pastel, so it creates this lovely sort of soft coverage. But now I'm just going to gently, lightly pull it up and down like this. I don't want to fill it all in completely. I want to let some of that background green show through. But just by really softly pulling it and then going up and down like this with my finger and working on my way across the page, sort of just gently pushing it in, but not too much. I've got fingerprints here and there, so I can just soften those off with more fingerprints. Let's see if a blender will do something. Let's see if that'll do anything. So this blender has a sharp edge on it, like a flat end. And if I do this with it, how cool is that? It's making grass. What it's doing is it's kind of taking off that darker green and leaving the lighter green that we've pushed in more showing through. Oh, that's cool. So you could try something like that. If you don't have a blender and you can't do that, then grab your pastel. So this is my lighter green, the one we've got in the grass. And I can just now start to put some grass over here in front of it. All right. Little strokes like we did with the charcoal. Vary the lines, vary the direction, vary the height. So same effect as what I was getting with the blender. Use the edge or the tip of it so that you're getting a harder line. We don't want soft edges like we were doing for the other parts of this picture. We want little lines that we can use to create little bits of grass that stick up like that. I've got a lot of dust on there that I'll have to get rid of. And just for fun, I'm going to put a few blades of dark green in here too. So remember, everything that's closer to us is more defined. So this is my dark green. I haven't used it very much. I did a little bit over there in the trees. You might just have one dark green. For some reason, I've got two. And I'm just zhooshing that around as well in here. This could be like the shadows under the grasses. So just pulling that around. Up and down, just work your way across the bottom of the page now. Little clumps, little bumps. There's some darker patches here and there. Try to keep it natural looking and organic, so we don't want too many of the same shapes or height. Okay, so vary the height. And I literally leave the pastel on the page and pull it around like this. Where I want it to be darker, I'll press a bit harder like that. So you can vary that mark, press hard where you want it to be dark, and then lift off when you don't want it to be dark. Some grasses sit in front of the other ones, so make sure you kind of pull some across on a little angle so they look like they're in front of a cluster of grass. I'm going to tip off my dust and see what's left underneath. Sometimes the dust gets in the way so much that you can't see what's sticking. All right, so that's looking pretty nice. And now I want to just soften off through here a little bit more with my light green. Probably a bit too late now because I've got the grass in front. But you could potentially put a bit more mist down here with your light green or your white or your blue. See what works. See what white does. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try different things. That's nice and soft, isn't it? And we can also get some light grass in here. So again, varying the tone. You don't want too many light bits, but just a few is nice. Might be catching the light from the sky, which we should put in some of those sky colours so that we've got a bit of the beautiful apricots sitting in our grass. How lovely will that be? Let's do that. I'll just finish putting a few more little light bits in. Soft edges, small marks. Now, I'm going to grab my apricot. This is the fun part. So because we've got apricot in the sky, it would make sense for it to be reflected on the grass, wouldn't it? Because everything reflects everything. So if we put a bit of that in here, it ties it all together. So again, just using the edge of your stick so you get that sharp line. And we can tie it together with that lovely apricot colour. You can even make some little flowers if you like. You can make little white flowers or apricot ones. Just little dots and dashes will make a flower. Don't have to actually draw a whole flower. It's amazing how you can make a flower just out of a few little marks. So they're nice flowers. One up there, nice and tall. There we go. And that's probably enough. Don't overdo it. If you overdo it, then it loses its impact and won't be as vibrant. So you don't want to do too much apricot or too much light or too much dark. It's sort of a nice combination of everything. I do like a bit of dark, though, I have to admit. Just creates more drama in the art then, doesn't it? Cool. So I reckon that's pretty much done. Let's have a look and assess. Sky, we've got that lovely mist at the back there behind the sky. The little clouds look quite nice. Happy to leave those as they are. The mist coming up over here is good. And then around this area in here, I was going to throw some more trees just down in there a little bit. So maybe touch up just some little tree shapes with your mid-green maybe. Hiding away in the mist and then dab them in softly. Might be too much, don't know. Let's see. That's quite nice. So some trees through there, and then we've got this beautiful line of trees coming down here. Do we need to tidy anything up around there? This is where you run your eye over it and just decide if you're done or not. So just greening up a bit of my tree line down through here. Cool. Pretty happy with that. And then the mist coming over here, I probably could put a bit more on, but quite happy with how that's looking. If I was going to put more on, I think I would spray it first, because unless we can set this stuff that's going to be under the mist, it's still going to come through and make mud and get dirty. So when you want to do something like that, you put a light color over a dark color, for instance, water over rocks or mist over mountains, it's a good idea to spray the painting, or spray that area anyway, with Workable fixative, and then let it set and dry, and then you can get more on top without mixing in what's underneath. So it's a really good option if you want to keep layering and adding more and more. The one I use is not that expensive. Let me see. So it's this guy, Workable Fixative. So it's colorless protection, pastel, chalk, charcoal, and pencil drawings. So I find that really good for in between my layers. And I have been putting it on at the end as well. I never used to spray my finished paintings because it actually does take the light out. I put it on here. I shouldn't do it inside, but I'll just show you. It can darken things quite significantly. We'll just see if that stays dark. Is a bit smelly. Doesn't take too long to dry. I used to take it outside to do that, but we'll just let it dry. So you can see how it darkens the pastel a little bit. Kind of goes, yeah, it takes the light out. So that's why a lot of people don't like to use it in their finished art, because it actually dulls everything down. But for layering and building up and getting pastel on top of pastel on top of pastel, it's a really good option. So that's still wet. Probably put it on a bit too thick. So I won't add more pastel yet because it'll just turn to mud. But now that I've sprayed that, and when it's dry, I could potentially then just wipe more mist over that and it won't mix with the colours that I've sprayed. So that's a really good option when you're building up your layers. So can I suggest that we sign our painting with charcoal or a pencil or whatever you've got handy? I'll try the white charcoal. Sign it there. And once it's signed, it's done. Done. It's still too wet. I won't put it on. So I hope you enjoyed that today. I think it was a pretty nice subject to do, something a little bit different. I really enjoy filling up the page. That gives me joy. I'll just show you when you peel off your tape. Hopefully we've got a nice clean edge, which does look rather lovely. If you want to put it into a plastic bag or something like that to keep, my nice ones I will put into a cellophane bag and either sell them as they are unframed, if people want to buy them, that is. In the art trail last year, I did that. I just had all these kinds of paintings that I've done in classes that didn't really want to frame, and I just sold them unframed, and people loved that. So there we go. Doesn't that look good with its lovely white edge? I'll just take my board away, tip that onto my towel a bit. I've got a lovely finished painting. How nice. For those of you watching the video, I will say farewell. Thanks so much for coming. And if you want to see more videos or do more classes, I've got lots and lots on my website. So hop over to deliciousart.com.au to find all the video classes there. Thanks for coming. Where is the record button? Stop recording.